Hey everyone, it's Ben Hardy here, and in today's video we're going to be doing a comparison between a 2022 Dodge Challenger Scat Pack Widebody and a 2022 Ford Mustang GT. Before we get into the video, I do need to mention that my car buying guide is available. Link in the description down below, so if you want to save time and money the next time you purchase a car, go look at it. Let's get into the video. Starting things off under the hood of the Challenger Scat Pack, we have a naturally aspirated 6.4 liter V8 that goes through an 8-speed automatic transmission or a 6-speed manual. Power outputs are 485 horsepower and then 475 pound-feet of torque. So a monstrous engine, sounds fantastic, and it's sad that this engine is going to be discontinued next year, but yeah, definitely a cool setup. Now, going from the Challenger to the Mustang, we have a naturally aspirated 5-liter V8 known as the Coyote. Goes through either a 10-speed automatic or a 6-speed manual. It's good for 450 horsepower and then 410 pound-feet of torque. The power figures have decreased by 10 horsepower and 10 pound-feet of torque because of emissions restrictions, which is kind of lame. But yeah, so if you get a 2022, you actually get less power than what you could have gotten in 21, which is sad. Now, moving back over to the Challenger, you guys can see here with the hood, you've got the old Hellcat hood on these Scat Packs now. So it's got all of the venting, so like you've got the scoop there in the center, and then on either side, looks really aggressive, still looks fantastic to this day. And then you guys can see here, you've got the retro design with the headlights. You've got the LED lights around the projector bulb there in the center. And then you guys can see there, that's actually not hollow like in the Hellcat. Got the RT logo. You can see the venting all down below. Super aggressive. This one still has the protection there on the front end. But yeah, really good looking car from a front end perspective. Looks like a muscle car, right? Now, popping over here to the Mustang, you guys can see a little bit more of like a sports car type design with the new Mustang. So you've got the fake venting there on the hood. Looks good though as an accent piece, right? And coming down below, you guys can see you've got the fishtail headlights with the projector bulb, and then you've got the accenting down below. It's also the turn signal. And then you can see here with the front grille, notice all blacked out. You do have the white Mustang horse. This has like a white appearance package on it for this particular GT. You see a really aggressive front splitter. And again, it kind of has that more like sleek sports car type look rather than an aggressive, boxy muscle car look like what the Challenger has. Now, moving to the side of the Challenger, this one has the wide body package. So we've got 305mm tires wrapped around 20-inch wheels in the front and in the rear. And you do get Brembo brakes up front with this package. You can see the fender flares are just massive. And that's all the wide body packages is actually bigger fender flares. I love how the brake calipers are red. Definitely adds a nice piece of accenting to the car. And you can see you've got a little 392 logo there on the side. And then you can see from the side profile perspective, just again, has that beefy, boxy muscle car look, especially with the fender flares. It really kind of accentuates everything with the car. You can see the breakdown in the back is actually a little bit smaller with the caliper and the rotor. And notice that the fuel door is darkened to kind of just go to a sportier theme with the Challenger. Now, popping back over here to the Mustang, notice you got the horse there on the ground. Now, this doesn't have like a wide body package or anything like that, but notice here with the wheels, this one has this like white appearance package, so the wheels have like white with silver. Definitely a unique appearance from an aesthetic perspective, I'd have to say. And, I'm not a fan of how it looks on camera, but in person it actually works. I will say that with the wheel design. And then you guys can see how massive the rotors are. You don't have red brake calipers or anything like that, so they're kind of hidden. I think that'd be cool if they did it in Mustang to make them pop out a little bit more. But I want you guys to let me know what you think about the white wheels. 5.0 badge also kind of whited out, right, instead of blacked out, like we were always talking about with what they do on a lot of cars. And yeah, there's your full side view. Again, kind of has that sleek sports car aesthetic to it. You can see the key fob here. So this Challenger is actually a manual. That's why it doesn't have the remote start function, if you guys are wondering. And you guys can see here underneath, storage space is great. Now with the Challenger, you do have quite a bit more storage space compared to the Mustang, and the like little entrance area, if that makes sense, is larger as well with the trunk. So it's just way more practical from a storage space perspective. And I love how you have the red outlining around the floor mats. I think that's really cool design touch, just to make them feel a little bit more special. And again, that's, having the big boxy design gives you more space, right? So it's another benefit. You have the old Hellcat spoiler that's now on the Scat Pack. You've got the LED lights in the back, which are super distinctive. I still think they look great to this day, even though they're like from 2015 at this point, right? Got the Dodge logo there in the center, and then you've got the kind of like rectangular exhaust tip covering. And again, notice the key fob, no remote start or anything like that. You have to get an automatic to get remote start. with the car. And yeah, again, with the boxy design, I think it looks great overall from a rear aesthetic perspective. And then popping back over to the Ford, notice this one does have remote start because this one's got the 10-speed automatic. It doesn't have the 6-speed manual. But popping open the trunk, you guys will notice, again, the opening isn't as like, it's still big, but it's not as practical. And then the space back here, it's just not as large. So from a practicality perspective, the Challenger is just a little bit better. But, I mean, at least it has a trunk, right? At least you can still use that whole setup. And then notice with the rear ends, you've got the taillights that are white as part of this white appearance package, which I think looks really good, actually. White GT badge, and then the body painted spoiler. And notice here with the exhaust tips at the bottom, definitely an aggressive appearance. And then you can see the parking sensors there. And I really like the back end of the Mustang. You can see what the taillights look like while they're on. I think it's a really good looking car. Like, I think the back end is the best part of the Mustang in my personal opinion. I've always thought that, though, to be honest. Now, moving back over to the Challenger with the interior here, you guys will notice you've got really nice contrast here at the top. So you've got the padding with the red stitching, and then down below. And I love the mix between the black and the red. I think that looks really good, actually, from an aesthetic perspective. All of your window controls, they're automatic, pretty normal stuff. Blind spot monitoring in the mirrors. And you can see the little door handle just down below right there. And you guys can see here with the seats in the back, you've got a mix between the Alcantara and the leather. Definitely looks great from an aesthetic perspective. And I wish the seatbelts were red, but I still think, having black seatbelts is fine. It still creates nice contrast with that. And then you guys can see here with the seat itself, again, really nice leather here with the stitching there that's finished in red. Got the Scat Pack logo on the center of the seat, and then the Alcantara all down the center with the leather on the side. And notice you got power adjustments there on the side of the seat as well. Got the metallic pedals, which I think, again, look great from a aesthetic perspective. Light controls, steering wheel is power adjustable, and there's one look for, we go to the Mustang. Now popping here to the interior of the Mustang, notice you've got a lot of contrast between the white and the black down below, and then you've got the silver trim for like the door handles. Notice a little bit of ambient lighting. Got 3 settings for the memory seats, and you guys can see there with the mirrors. And you guys will notice here with the back seat area, really nice leather in the center with the white contrasting the black. Now I will say, the Mustang, you can't really fit people back there comfortably at all. The not Camaro, I'm saying Camaro, Challenger rather, you can. So that is a big difference with the vehicles. Is the Challenger is actually practical from a backseat perspective, whereas the Mustang is not. Now you guys can see the inserts there in the center of the seat. Definitely look great from an aesthetic perspective. Then the Mustang logo right there. You can see the pedal layout at the bottom. And then notice the light control just above. And then notice more of that white trim right there. I love the contrast with the white and the black. I think it looks great with the car. And now, going back to the Challenger, you guys can see, love the startup with it in the graphic. It says 392. Looks great. But popping here to the steering wheel, you guys can see you've got nice leather all around with the contrasted stitching there on the center portion of the steering wheel. And you guys will notice all the controls there. So like your cruise control, you've got radio controls in the back, you've got voice command controls, all that fun stuff. Turn signal, windshield wiper stalk. And yeah, that's all for the steering wheel. Now popping here to the gauge cluster, you can see here with the RPMs on one side, you've got the speed over there on the other side. And then there in the center, you can go through a couple different screens, see different bits of vehicle information. I love all the performance bits of info that you can see there in the center gauge cluster. And also the G-forces as well. So pretty cool, all the different bits of info that you can see there with the Challenger. And then also notice you can kind of see like the carbon fiber a little bit around the gauge cluster itself, which is another cool thing. And I love how the speedo goes up to 180 miles an hour. That just shows you the sport mode and then the track, right? When you pop it in, it'll let you know with a little graphic there in the center. And again, you guys can see the carbon fiber also around the infotainment system. This is like your performance page with the Challenger. It's the best way to put it. So you guys can see like the setup for the launch control, for example, and you can set the RPMs to what you think is best to launch the car, which good luck, because rear-wheel drive at almost 500 horsepower, it's just going to roast through the rear tires if you try to launch control most of the time. I will tell you that. Even with the wide body package, it still gets tail happy and all that fun stuff. You can see the different customizations for the drive modes, how you can kind of like customize everything to your liking. And that's kind of, the custom mode is the thing that's best for that, but you can also change with the other drive modes. So like every drive mode's pretty much like a custom mode, which is kind of interesting if you ask me. And I definitely think the carbon fiber insert there around the infotainment system, I think that's a great addition. I think that it's an option, but I think they should just make it standard to kind of bring up the interior with the Challenger. Just my personal opinion. You guys can see like the real-time horsepower and torque. So like if you feather the throttle a little bit, you can actually see that. Heated cooled seats for the front, heated steering wheel, and then dual zone climate. Navigation as well. So pretty much fully loaded right from a tech perspective, which is great. And response time with the infotainment system is also really solid. So that's another big positive with the Challenger. And then you guys can see backup camera. Nothing too crazy with that. Resolution's pretty decent. No 360 camera system or bird's eye view or anything like that. Down below, you've got analog controls for like the radio. Notice drive modes, launch control setup, launch control, aka burnout mode. And then you guys can see here with the carbon fiber and then the shifter for the manual transmission. Love the feeling of the shifter in the Challenger. So if you get an RT or a Scat Pack, they've got the same transmission. If you get a Hellcat, it's different, which they actually have tentatively discontinued the Hellcat manual for the time being. I made a video on my second channel about that. But really notchy, and because they do like a circular head, it feels like how a muscle car transmission should feel, in my personal opinion. Like when I think of an old school muscle car, I think of, again, ball on the top and just how notchy and aggressive that shifter feels. That's what I think of. Anyways, you guys can see the stitching there in the center console. Storage space, pretty good. You know, it's relatively practical. And then with the glove box, you can see, again, really good storage space. And then stitching there all across the dash, which is great. And then you can see this particular one has the premium headliner added to it. So feels nice, and it brings up the interior, just makes it look a little bit nicer from an aesthetic perspective. I definitely think that it's a cool thing, but again, I feel like some of the stuff should be standard, just my personal opinion. But you know what? Dodge can do whatever they want. So you guys can see the window sticker here on this wide body. You guys can see all the options on this particular car, and it gets pretty expensive. So I definitely recommend the wide body package because having two 75mm tires on the Challenger is not enough for the Scat Pack. 305s is great. It feels great, handles better, and it's worth it. So if you're going to order a new Challenger, get the wide body. No questions asked. So definitely my recommendation with the Challenger. And you guys can see with some of the options, like the pricing on it, not too crazy, but it adds up pretty quick because you can see the base price there, $44,000 for a Scat Pack, and then just notice everything there is like $1,000. It's like $1,000, $1,000, and then that's how it adds up to that $63,000 MSRP. You guys can see there at the bottom. And since it's a manual, it does get the gas guzzler tax. If you guys are wondering, the automatic does not, because the automatic has slightly better fuel economy. So if you don't want to pay gas guzzler tax, you'll have to get the 8-speed automatic at this point. If you get a Hellcat, you get gas guzzler tax either way. So, but you can't get a manual transmission anymore. So I guess that's a kind of a catch-22. But yeah, definitely a cool-looking car from an aesthetic perspective. And again, it has that muscle car aesthetic. Now, popping to the interior here of the Mustang, you guys can see really cool animation with the gauge cluster. You got the Mustang horse there in the center. And you guys will notice here with the steering wheel setup, you've got really nice leather all around. You got the stitching there in the center, not contrast, so it's all dark. And then you got your practical controls here on the steering wheel. The thing about muscle cars is they have some nice elements like the steering wheel and all that, and you guys can see the paddle shifters there, very plasticky. But then they've got like a bunch of like plastic controls from like cheaper cars, so it's kind of an interesting mix between like luxury and not luxury. But here for the gauge cluster, you guys can see full digital gauge cluster in the center with the Mustang. You got the different steering modes. The one that feels best for me is Sport personally. I just like having heavier steering when I'm in a sportier car, but that's just my personal opinion. And then you've got the different like setup once you go into the different drive modes, which is another cool thing about the Mustang. And so, yeah, I definitely think like the overall setup is great. And I'm glad that there's a lot of customization. You can do the same thing in the Challenger, but with what Ford does where you can like access different options on the steering wheel or on toggle switches with their different vehicles, I think is very smart. Popping here to the infotainment system, you guys can see with the backup camera, resolution is really good. You got the zoom function on it. It's blinking just because of the frame rate of the camera. Now from an infotainment system perspective, I feel like they're pretty equal. I do prefer like the aesthetic of the infotainment system and the Challenger, but I think that they both have really good response time. Notice we've got heated, cooled seats here in the Mustang, and then notice we've got the drive mode, steering mode, select stability control, hazard lights, and the stop-start button. So from a luxury perspective, right, they're both pretty equal. And then you guys can see the brake down below, and then again, it's got the 10-speed automatic. Couple cup holders, right? Got the center console here with the charging ports, and then you can see the glove box over there. So from an interior storage space perspective, they're pretty equal on that ground as well. Stitching there on the top. And then you guys can see kind of like all the trim. And then at the very top, there's nothing really happening. You can't get a sunroof in a Mustang whatsoever. They just don't offer that as an option. Now here is the window sticker for this Mustang GT. And you guys will be shocked with the price difference between the cars, since they're technically competitors from a powertrain perspective, even though the Dodge has a little bit more horsepower. But you guys can see the options added on this particular one. And then total MSRP, $48,830. So there's a pretty big price difference between the cars. Quick final thoughts with both the cars. So the Challenger, again, has that muscle car aesthetic and that muscle car feel. It's big, substantial, it's comfortable, it's a great daily driver. The Mustang, on the other hand, kind of goes more towards the sporty side with the handling and all that. Is the Challenger worth significantly more than Mustang? No, but you get quite a bit more equipment with the Challenger compared to the Mustang, so like that's part of the reason why it's more expensive. But then also there's so much hype behind the Challenger compared to the Mustang nowadays, and so that's kind of, you know, Dodge is charging more because they can at this point. But yeah, that's our quick comparison. Let me know which one you guys like more.